Jessica here from Fox's Blog Knits. Welcome back or welcome to my channel if you're new here. Thank you for joining me from Northland, New Zealand today, and I'll be sharing with you a recently finished object that I've just done. As always, I include show notes and links to what I've mentioned within the description below, so make sure that you check those out at the end of this video. And if you haven't already, I'd love it if you could subscribe to my channel, and if you enjoy this episode, please give it a like or check out my finished object playlist for more content just like this. So this finished object is the Magnolia sweater from Danish designer Camilla Vad, and not only is she a pattern designer, but she has her own range of yarns too. Her site is actually currently on hold, but she has new yarns coming in August, so I'm super keen to check those out. Have you made a Magnolia sweater yet, or is this on your list? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. So I discovered this designer via Instagram, actually. She came up under my search, and I love it when that algorithm works. This pattern I discovered comes in two versions, one for chunky yarn and the other for 4 to 5 ply. And the lighter weight yarn also has a short sleeve version too, so it's quite versatile. I'd actually love to see it in a linen cotton blend. I think that would look great. And I actually discovered the chunky yarn version first, and I had it on my list in Ravelry for ages, but as I'm not personally a fan of knitting with chunky yarns, mainly because I just don't like using large needles, I think my personal optimal needle size for my hands to knit comfortably is probably a 4 to 5 millimeter needle. So I was really chuffed when I came across the lighter weight version. So this was my first time attempting lace, as you may know, and I've always wanted to make a lace sweater with lace accents, but I was terrified it was going to be too complicated, and the Magnolia caught my eye because it wasn't a large area to make, and if it was really that mind-bendy, I wouldn't have to do it for too long. It's only on the sleeves and the bottom of the body. The yarn for the sweater I chose was a familiar combination. If you've seen my balloon sweater finished object video, you'll recognise this. I had purchased 14 skeins of the Cumulus by Fiberspace, 7 for my balloon sweater and 7 for another one, but after discovering this pattern, I knew that I had to change tack. So this sweater is knitted with the yarn held double, and for the base yarn I used my favourite naked yarn. Here we go. And if you missed it, I've decided to call undyed yarn naked or nudie yarn, and it is a scrummy 3-ply merino. This is all I have left of this one skein. So the merino is a 100% merino and a 3-ply from Wild Earth Yarns, and they are based in Christchurch. And this yarn is non-superwash, which is actually my preference, and I love using it as a base, and it does smell so nice. The fluff yarn I used was my favourite fluff, as I've mentioned, Cumulus by Fiberspace, which is this colour here in Pearl. It's super nice and light. This is a Suri alpaca and silk blend. It is a 2 to 3 ply, but it's more a 3 ply. It's 75% alpaca and 25% silk, and it comes in a range of really beautiful colours and is such a dream to knit with and feels really soft directly against your skin. Technically, I might add, both of these yarns were in my stash, so I didn't splurge. But I did buy the merino directly from Wild Earth Yarns and Cumulus from a local knitting store in Matakana called The Knitting Truck, and I used 900 metres of each yarn. My gauge for this was slightly off, so I had to use a 4.5mm needle to reach the recommended gauge rather than the 4mm from the pattern, and I made a size small. There was an extra small option, but I didn't want the sweater to be too tight, and I do prefer an oversized fit. So for modifications, I did tweak it a little bit. I added about 4 centimetres to the body before starting the lace pattern, but I kind of wish that I didn't. While I like the length for keeping me warm, if it was a little bit shorter, it might have hit me in a better spot, but it still does have room for the slouch. The main modifications I did were in the sleeves, and the main reason you'll probably think is super silly. So I hate magic loop. The thought of doing the lace pattern actually filled me with dread using magic loop. Plus, I prefer a slightly fuller sleeve, as you all know. So instead of doing the full decreases before the lace, I carried on so I could continue to use my 8-inch circular needle. Turns out this was a fab decision as I whizzed through those sleeves, and I decreased instead after the lace pattern in the gap between the repeat, and I'll just show you where that is now. So there's the repeat around here and this little strip, and I did the little decreases just here. It was only around I think 8 stitches, and I think it gives a really nice effect. The other modification I did was using a smaller needle for the twisted rib, just so that it fit a little more snugly. And now we get to the practical stuff. So this sweater is made in the round, and it is knit top down, which makes it super easy to follow. The lace pattern is all relatively simple with the yarn overs, knitting 2 together, and then there are these bobbles, or as they are described in the pattern, nups. Apparently that's pronounced like soup, but for the interest of this, they can be nups or bobbles. So the nups, or the bobbles, are made with a crochet hook, and they are fiddly as, and to be honest, even though I love crochet, I flipping hated doing these. They took forever, and the pattern only said to pass through the yarn about 6 times, but it really needed to be 8 to get a full popping out bobble rather than a sunken in, sad looking deflated balloon. I'll link to the video that I followed in order to learn how to do the bobbles. They are explained quite well in the pattern, but I think it helps to have a visual if you learn in a visual way like me. In the end, they look okay, but there was some swearing involved with that part. And one thing that didn't turn out quite as I expected was the twisted rib on the collar. And after doing a regular long tail cast on, I did find that I messed up the ribbing pattern on the collar, which is crazy because it's just 1 by 1. But I messed it up, and it should have been knit through the back loop and purl one, but instead I knitted twice, once through the back loop. So there you go, I just made it more personal. I think it still looks okay. It's not too bad. The techniques used within this pattern are German short rows, which are my favourite kind of short rows, increases, yarn overs, nups or bobbles, and nothing that isn't too easy to figure out. I use the Italian bind off for my cast off. It's my favourite way to cast off ribbing, and it looks so tidy. As for blocking, because this was a lace pattern, I knew that I needed to do a full wet block, and I'm glad that I did, as it made the lace really stand out, and I could fix those nups that weren't quite as puffy as they should have been. So what did I think of this pattern? I did enjoy it. It was a great first introduction to lace, and if you're thinking that you might want to give that a go, I would say only to attempt this sweater if you've made a few simple sweaters already. I think that would probably be the best way to go about it. The pattern had both a written instruction for the lace as well as a chart. As I've mentioned, I'm more of a visual person, so I found it easier to follow the chart as this was my first time using a chart pattern as well. I would say that this is definitely a pattern for an intermediate knitter rather than a beginner, just with the types of abbreviations and techniques that are used. I did feel that it was quite well written and it was easy to follow if you pay close attention, like any more advanced pattern than a beginner. And I do love my finished sweater. It's quite nice. In the end, I think this took me about 3 weeks. We did have a weekend away in the middle and work got a little bit busier for me than usual, so I didn't get to spend as much time on it as I would have liked. Let me know in the comments if you have already made this one before and how did you find it. I always love to read your comments and see how you're going. So thanks for being with me here again today. If you've enjoyed this episode, please give it a like and make sure that you subscribe to my channel for the next episode of Fox's Blog Knits, and I'll see you again soon.